All right. Shalom, family. It's your brother Kanaiba coming at you once again with this video titled, The Only White Party That Actually Matters. Okay. So, one of the big things that's going on in the news right now, one of the things that's the big buzz right now, so to speak, is everything that's happening with Diddy, right? Everything he's, allegedly done over the years, okay? But the main focal point is what's been happening at these infamous white parties that he's given over the years, okay? What you got to understand, Diddy and people like him in Hollywood, they are within the craft, okay? They are adherents to different mystery school systems of old, which is basically going into the worship of different pagan gods of antiquity, okay? And what you have to understand about the left-hand side is the left-hand side is meant to mimic the right-hand side. Okay? Now, with Diddy and all of his white parties and things of that nature, again, and this is just my critique, I could be wrong, but Diddy, they all worship the Bacchus. Okay, they are adherents to what's known as the Bacchanalian rites, in which I'll probably be doing a video on that after this one. Okay, but what you have to understand is, with that being said, the left-hand side is meant to mimic the right-hand side. Okay, and that's, again, you have these quote-unquote white parties, and make no mistake about it, Diddy is not the only one that gives these white parties. Okay, he's just the one that's famous for it, right? But these white parties are nothing more than a reflection, or them trying to mimic the right-hand side. That's why I titled this video the way that I did. There's only one white party that you as an Israelite should really be focused on. There's only one that really matters. And this is the real white party that you want to attend. Okay? We're going to show this particular white party on the right-hand side. Okay? Because when you look at these parties, these white parties on the left-hand side, there's certain aspects about it, right? First of all, these parties are not exclusive to everybody, right? There's only a special select few that are invited to these parties, and you have to be invited. You have to be quote unquote worthy to be an attendee at these quote unquote white parties on the left hand side. Okay, and that's nothing more than a mirroring of the right hand side, and I'm going to show you in this particular video. Okay, so without further ado, let's actually get into the video. Okay, all right, so we're going to start off with a parable that Yahushua actually gave to the chief priests and Pharisees in Matthew chapter 22. Okay, so this is actually Matthew chapter 22, and we're going to start with verse 2. Okay, and it reads, it says, "The kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son." Right? So in this particular parable, Again, this is a parable. It's likened unto something, right? The king in this particular parable, of course, is the Most High Yahweh, right? And he made a marriage for his son being Yahweh Shai, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. Okay? So there's a marriage that's being made by a king for his son, right? Now, I want you to pay very close attention, because for a minute here, we're going to jump back and forth between this parable in Matthew chapter 22 and the book of Revelation, right? So keep this in mind. This parable is about this particular marriage, which is actually a feast, so to speak. Okay, so we're going to put this on pause right here, and let's go to the book of Revelation. We're going to look at chapter 21. Okay, so this is Revelation chapter 21 and verse 2. And it reads, it says, "And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband." Okay, now what did we already establish in Matthew chapter 22? That particular parable, again, it's about a marriage, right? It's this particular king prepared a marriage for his son. So now in Revelation 21 and verse 2, we see this quote unquote city, New Jerusalem, that's prepared as a bride that's adorned for her husband. Now, knowing everything that we know, this particular husband in this verse, of course, is the son that we read about in the parable in Matthew chapter 22. But now the question begs, who is the bride? Is this bride an actual city? No. New Jerusalem in this particular verse is talking about the children of Israel. Okay? And it's a select group of the children of Israel. Right? But why is it referring to them as a city that's coming down from heaven? Well, you got to understand that this marriage is going to take place after the destruction of America. But in order for these particular Israelites to survive that, they have to be beamed up or taken up to escape the destruction that's coming to America. If they're taken up, they have to come back down. Okay, let's get a little bit of context. Okay, let's stay in the book of Revelation, but let's look at chapter 11. Okay, so this is Revelation chapter 11 and verse 12. And it reads, it says, "And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them." Okay, so this should explain why what we read in Revelation chapter 21 says what it says. Okay, it talks about the holy city, New Jerusalem, basically coming down from God out of heaven as a bride adorned for her husband, right? Well, it's coming down because they ascended up. The elect of Israel, they ascended up. And why is that? It's because they had to escape the destruction that was coming to Babylon the Great, which of course is America, right? Because this particular marriage is not going to take place until Babylon the Great, America, is destroyed. Okay, that's why when you read, I believe, 2 verses down in this very same chapter, you start reading about the third woe. Okay, like immediately after this, it's like 2 verses down, you start reading about the third woe, which is World War III. Okay, so now with that being said, let's read more about the people whom are invited and are going to be participants of this particular marriage feast. Okay, let's stay here in the book of Revelation and let's go to chapter 7. Okay, let's take a look at something here. Okay, so this is Revelation chapter 7, and we're going to start with verse 4. And it reads, it says, "And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel." Okay, so when you read Revelation chapter 7 and you start with verse 4 all the way down to verse 8, you read about the 144,000, okay, which of course are 12,000 men out of each tribe of Israel that are sealed. Okay, so of course there's 12 tribes. 12,000 times 12 equals 144,000. Okay, just to give you a brief summary of verse 4 through 8. Okay, because what we're going to do now that we've established that, we're going to jump down to verse 9 and read about the next group that are a part of this wedding feast. Okay, let's get some more information. Let's look at verse 9. Take a look at this. So this is Revelation chapter 7 and verse 9. And it reads, it says, "And after this," meaning what? After he saw the 144,000 sealed, right? It says, "After this, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb. When I watched closely, clothed with white robes." Allow me to repeat that part. "Clothed with white robes, and palms in their hands." Okay, so after the 144,000 were sealed, John actually saw a great multitude of people that could not be numbered. Okay, and these people, these are Israelites coming out of all these different nations and peoples and kindreds and speaking different languages and things of that nature. He saw these people, these Israelites, but the thing is, he said that they were clothed with white robes. See, now we're getting to it. So why I said there's only one white party that actually really matters. This is the one I'm talking about. Okay, this is the marriage that we read about in Matthew 22, that particular parable that Yahushua gave to the chief priests and Pharisees. Okay, that's what we're reading right now. Okay, so this great multitude of people, these Israelites coming from all these different places. Okay, they are with the 144,000, and they're all clothed with white robes. Okay, so now that we have that information, let's go back to the parable in Matthew chapter 22 that we were reading, and let's read about what the king commanded his servants to do. Okay, let's take a look at this. Watch closely. So this is Matthew chapter 22 and verse 9, and it reads, it says, "Go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye shall find, bid to the marriage." Okay, so invitations are being sent out. Okay, this is what you got to understand. Okay, invitations are being sent out pretty much every day. Okay, you know, those brothers that you see on the street corners, You may think that they're, dressed strangely because they're dressed more in our ancient apparel. And, they're talking about the Bible, or you may see the same brothers on the internet, maybe YouTube, giving the same types of messages. Okay. They're bidding you to this particular marriage. Okay. They're inviting you to this particular feast. Okay. This party, so to speak, this white party. Okay. It's definitely a white party. Okay. But just on the right hand side, which we're about to see as we continue reading. Okay. So let's continue. Let's look at the next verse here. Okay. So this is verse 10, and it reads, it says, so those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good. And the wedding was furnished with guests. See, here's the thing that people got to understand. Okay. These particular servants, it's really only their job to give out the invites. Okay. That's their job. Give out the invites. Okay. But it's the king's job that sent them. It's the king's job to determine who's actually worthy to get into this party. That's why it says they, as many as they found, both good and bad. See, it's not our job to determine whether or not an Israelite is worthy. It's just our job to give you the message, to send out the invitations. But ultimately, it's up to the Most High Yahweh to determine if you're actually worthy to get in to the festivities. Okay. And that's what we're about to see. Okay, let's actually look at the next verse. All right, take a look at this. So this is verse 11, and it reads, it says, and when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there a man which had not on a wedding garment. See, now, this is something else you got to understand. Okay. This particular gathering, there's a very, very strict dress code. Okay, there's a very strict dress code. And you know what that dress code is? We already read it in Revelation chapter 7. They all had on those white robes. That's the dress code. That's why I said the left-hand side is meant to mimic the right-hand side. Okay, this is indeed the white party on the right-hand side. This is the only white party that matters, the only one that you should be focused on getting into. Make sure you have that garment. Okay, in which we're going to explain further what that garment, this white garment, actually is, what it represents. Okay, let me not get too ahead of myself and jump the gun. Okay, but again, the king saw somebody that arrived, but they didn't have on their wedding garment. Okay, let's see how the king responded to him. Let's take a look at this. So this is verse 12, and it reads, it says, and he saith unto him, friend, how camest thou in hither, not having a wedding garment? Now watch closely. And he was speechless. It's got to be a scary, scary thought, right? The king looking at you. What you doing here without your wedding garment on? Okay, that's why I said it's a very strict dress code. You cannot get in. You cannot attend without this particular garment, without the white garment, this white party, so to speak. Very strict dress code. That's why, again, on the left-hand side, even with Diddy, I've heard stories where I heard one story where somebody actually tried to come into his white party. They didn't have on the white, and he was livid. Okay, but again, if Diddy it was infuriated for somebody coming to his white party not having on white, okay, and this is a carnal Negro. I mean, how much more the Heavenly Father? How is he gonna feel? Okay, you trying to show up without your wedding garment, without your white garment on. Okay, this is the real white party over here on the right hand side. You have to dress accordingly. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back just to refresh everybody's memory. Let's go back to Revelation chapter 7 and verse 9. Okay, let's take a look at that one more time before we move forward. Okay, so this is Revelation chapter 7 and verse 9 again, and it reads, it says, and after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which could not be numbered, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and peoples and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb. Watch closely. Clothed with white robes. Allow me to repeat that part once again. Clothed in white robes and palms in their hands. See those white robes? That's what we're talking about when you go back to the parable. When the king looked at that particular individual and said, friend, why did you come here without your wedding garment? Then that individual was speechless. This is the garment that he didn't come with. It's this white robe. Okay, that's what he neglected to dress in. So the king is looking at him like, how dare you come to this particular event that I set up for my son, this marriage, this wedding. You come here and you're not dressed appropriately. And the guy, he couldn't say a word. He was speechless because he knew he was in the wrong. Hey, what you gonna do? You gonna argue with the king? You can't do that. Who would do that? Right? But that's what's going on here. All right. So now that we've established that, let's go to the prophet Esdras, aka Ezra, and let's see what he has to say about this. Okay, because what we're gonna see is Esdras or Ezra. He was given the same vision. The same vision that you read about in Revelation chapter 7 that we read about, starting at verse 4 with the 144,000 and then seeing the great multitude. Ezra, he got the same vision. Okay, because all the prophets, they spoke the same thing. It's the same message from Genesis to Revelation. One harmonious song. Okay. So let's take a look at that. Okay, let's go to 2nd Ezra chapter 2, and let's take a look here. So this is 2nd Ezra chapter 2, and we're gonna start with verse 38, and it reads. It says, "Arise up and stand. Behold, the number of those that be sealed in the feast of the Lord." There's two things we got to point out here. Okay, remember I told you that Ezra is getting the same vision that John got in Revelation chapter 7. Remember we talked about this earlier in the video, that we read about first the 144,000 that were what? Sealed. That were sealed 144,000. That's why I'm saying here, to behold the number of those that be sealed. We know that number because John already saw it. He said it's 144,000, right? But now The second thing we have to point out is what? That here, Ezra is referring to this as a feast. We know that this is the wedding or the marriage that Yahushua was talking about in the parable in Matthew chapter 22. But here, Ezra is referring to it as a feast. It's all the same thing, but he's referring to it as a feast. The word feast is just another word or way of saying party. That's why I said this is the white party on the right-hand side. Okay? But again, notice first, Ezra is talking about those that are sealed, which we know is the 144,000. Now, in Revelation chapter 7, John first saw the 144,000 sealed, and then after that, he saw the great multitude. Let's see if that's the same sequence in which Ezra sees it. Let's see if he's seeing the same vision. Okay, let's read it one more time. It says, "Arise up and stand. Behold the number of those that be sealed in the feast of the Lord." And we know that there's 144,000 sealed, right? Let's look at the next verse now. So this is verse 39, and it reads, it says, "Which are departed from the shadow of the world." Now watch closely. "And have received glorious garments of the Lord." So now, that 144,000, along with what the people we're about to read about, but more specifically, because they were just mentioned, the 144,000, they received glorious garments, right? They received glorious garments. Again, I have two words for you. Dress code. That's what we've been talking about this whole time, proving that this is the white party on the right-hand side. They've received glorious garments. Now, I wonder what these glorious garments look like. Could they be the same white garments we've been reading about all video? Well, but let's continue. Let's see. Let's read the next verse, right? So this is verse 40, and it reads, it says, "Take thy number, O Zion, and shut up those of thine that are clothed in white." Allow me to repeat that. "And shut up those of thine that are clothed in white." There you go. White party on the right-hand side. We've been reading this all day. Okay, we've been reading it all day. This is the same white garment that's so very important, going all the way back to the parable that we started with, that Yahushua was giving the Pharisees and the chief priests in Matthew chapter 22. Okay, remember the king looked at that one person that tried to get in without their garment. He looked at him and said, "Friend, why are you here without your wedding garment?" And the guy was speechless. You can't come into this particular event. You can't come to this event unless you have your white garment on. Very strict dress code. And this is on the right-hand side. Okay. Let's read this verse again. It says, "Take thy number, O Zion, and shut up those of thine that are clothed in white, which have fulfilled the law of the Lord." Okay. So now let's move forward. Okay, we starting to get on the home run stretch now. We on the home run stretch. We almost done here. Okay. So let's look at the next verse. So this is verse 41, and it reads, it says, "The number of thy children whom thou longest for, is fulfilled. Beseech the power of the Lord, that thy people, which have been called from the beginning, may be hallowed. I told you that this particular party is not exclusive to everybody. Didn't I say that in the beginning of this video, that it's not exclusive, that it's not open for everybody? Notice it says that thy people, which have been called from the beginning. Everybody's not his people, and everybody has not been called from the beginning. This party is only for a select, elite group of people. Okay, we've already established that. Okay, so let's read it again. It says, the number of thy children, whom thou longest for, is fulfilled. Beseech the power of the Lord, that thy people, which have been called from the beginning, may be hallowed. Again, the word hallowed is another way of saying holy or set apart. They're not like everybody else. Okay, let's move forward. Next verse. This is verse 42, and it reads, it says, I, Esdras, saw upon the Mount Zion a great people whom I could not number, and they all praised the Lord with songs. Now, I told you Esdras saw the same thing that John saw in Revelation chapter 7. First, Esdras talked about those that are sealed, which is in reference to the 144,000. And now he's talking about a great number of people, a great people that he could not number. That's the same sequence that John the Revelator went through. First, he mentioned the 144,000 being sealed. Then he talked about the great multitude that couldn't be numbered. It's the same vision. Okay, even if you really want to go there, not only is he seeing the same vision that John talked about in Revelation chapter 7, he's going over into chapter 14 of the book of Revelation. In Revelation chapter 14, that's when you read about Yahweh Shai upon Mount Zion with the 144,000. He's saying the exact same thing. Okay? But again, he's seeing the same people. And he's seeing the same sequence. Now we got to see. Well, we really already saw it. He talked about the dress code. He already said that the clothing, they receive glorious garments. Right? So let's continue. Let's keep reading. Let's look at the next verse here. So this is verse 43. And it reads, and in the midst of them there was a young man of high stature, taller than all the rest, and upon every one of their heads he set crowns, and was more exalted, which I marveled at greatly. Now, I got a question. Who is this young man that Esdras saw in this vision? You should already know by what I said. I told you that, and he's also seeing what John saw in Revelation chapter 14 about how in Revelation 14 Yahweh Shai was upon Mount Zion with the 144,000. But right now Esdras is talking about what he saw upon Mount Zion. So of course this young man got to be Yahweh Shai, whom the world knows is Jesus Christ. And that's who it is. Okay, that's why he's the one that's setting crowns on all of their heads. Okay, because he's the one with that authority to give out those crowns. Okay, so now let's move forward. Let's look at the next verse. So this is verse 44, and it reads, It says, so I asked the angel and said, sir, what are these? Okay, so now Esdras is not really understanding the vision that he's seeing. Who are all these people that I'm seeing? And what is this that's actually taking place? Who is this young man in the midst of them, setting crowns on their heads? Where are they coming from? Why are they here? Esdras wants answers. So he asks the angel that's showing him this vision. And let's see what the angel explains to him. Let's look at the next verse here. And this next verse is very, very, very important. Now, why do I say that? Because now we're about to go into detail about this particular garment, the dress code. The question begs, this particular white garment that we've been talking about all video, is this a literal garment? Or has this white garment been a metaphor for something else all along? Let's look at the next verse. Let's see what happens here. So this is verse 45, and it reads, now watch closely. He answered and said unto me, these be they that have put off the mortal clothing and put on the immortal, and have confessed the name of God. Now are they crowned, now watch closely, and receive palms. Now we know that he's seeing the same vision. What did we read in Revelation chapter 7 and verse 9? About that great multitude out of all nations, kindreds, peoples, and tongues. It said they had on white robes and they had palms in their hands. Look at this. It's the same thing. Ezra is seeing the same vision. It's the same thing. Okay? But now let's point out the clothing. Clothing was mentioned in this verse. It says that this great multitude, the 144,000, and this great multitude along with them, they have put off the mortal clothing and have put on the immortal clothing. Now we're getting into it, right? This is not a literal garment, right? See what happened in the parable in Matthew chapter 22. You see that particular individual, he wasn't dressed to appropriately, and the king addressed him. See, he came there with the mortal clothing on. That's what he came with. Okay, I know I'm not making sense right now. Or maybe I am, but it's going to be more clear once we really get more into it. We got to find out what the immortal clothing actually is. Okay, whatever this immortal clothing is, it's really what it's saying. It's immortality. Okay? But it's something you have to become that. Okay, let me not speak in riddles. Let's get the precept. Okay, let's see what Solomon had to say about this matter. Let's talk more about the immortal clothing. What is that? Because that's the white robe, the white garment. The white garment is the immortal clothing. What is the immortal clothing? This is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 1 and verse 15. Look at this. For righteousness is immortal. It's righteousness. Okay? It may seem mysterious, but it's not that deep. Righteousness is immortal. Righteousness is that immortal clothing. That's the white garment that you have to make it to this party. it's righteousness. You can't be wicked and make it there. That's why I said this is the white party on the right-hand side. Okay, see on the left-hand side, that white party, it's a counterfeit white party because nothing but wickedness takes place in that particular white party. The color white, according to the scriptures, is supposed to represent righteousness, purity, and things of that nature. There's nothing righteous or pure happening at any of those white parties in Hollywood. This is the white party on the right-hand side. Okay? So again, the verse says what? For righteousness is immortal. And Ezra said what? That great multitude, they put off the mortal clothing and put on the immortal. All those people there, they were righteous. Okay? And if that's not enough, let's bring this thing on home. Let's bring it full circle. Let's go back to the book of Revelation, and we're going to go to chapter 19. Let's bring it full circle and give the full understanding. Take a look at this. So this is Revelation chapter 19 and verse 2. Now, before I read this, allow me to refresh your memory. I made a statement in the beginning of this video. Remember when I said that this marriage is not going to take place until America is destroyed? Now, again, that's why I said we're bringing this full circle. Okay, let me prove that statement as well. Okay, so let's look at this sequence. Okay, this is Revelation chapter 19 and verse 2. And it reads, it says, for true and righteous are his judgments, for he hath judged the great whore. Now, for those of you who may not know, the great whore is America. Okay, let's not leave it to suspense. The great whore is America. And we're reading in this particular verse, God has now judged the great whore, meaning America is now destroyed at this point in this scripture. Okay, it says, which did corrupt the earth with her fornication, and hath avenged the blood of his servants at her hand. Why? Because a lot of Israelites, millions, have been murdered in this country. So now that blood has to be avenged, and it is at this point in this verse. And this is a future prophecy. Okay, so now what happens after the great whore, America, is judged? Let's jump down a bit. Let's look at verse 7. Let's bring it on home. Watch closely. So this is verse 7, and it reads, it says, let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife hath made herself ready. Do you see that? Back in verse 2, we read about America has now been judged. It's destroyed at that point. So after that, further down in verse 7, now the marriage of the Lamb is come. I told you the marriage don't take place until after this place is judged, until after it's destroyed. Okay, and now in this verse it's saying that his wife hath made herself ready. The wife of the Lamb is the church being the children of Israel. The children of Israel is the bride of the Lamb. It's always been this way. This was always the setup. Okay, this is going into the parable that we read in Matthew 22. Again, the king may set up a marriage for his son. This is what Yahushua was talking about but he was telling it to us in a parable. This is what he's talking about. Okay, now it's saying that his wife hath made herself ready. How has his wife made herself ready? Let's look at the next verse. Check this out. This is verse 8, and it reads, it says, and to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen. Watch closely. Clean and white. Allow me to repeat that. Clean and white. For the fine linen is the righteousness of saints. I can drop the mic now. That clean, white, fine linen, the same white garment we've been talking about the whole video, is righteousness. This is why when you go back, the angel told Esdras that this multitude, which is the wife of the Lamb, this multitude, they put off the mortal clothing and put on the immortal clothing. We read that righteousness is what's immortal. That's why here it's saying that clean, white, fine linen is the righteousness of the saints. Do you see how that just we brung it full circle? How all of that lined up? It's talking about the same thing. Okay, because all the prophets spoke the same thing. One harmonious song. Okay, so now with that being said, let's look at the next verse. Okay, let's check this out. So this is verse 9, and it reads, it says, and he saith unto me, write, blessed are they which are called unto the marriage supper of the Lamb. Allow me to repeat that part. Blessed are they which are called unto the marriage supper of the Lamb. You blessed if you're called to this marriage supper. Okay, this quote unquote white party. If you're called, right? So now again, remember, I said invitations are being sent out pretty much every day. Right? Blessed are they that are called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Right? So now we're going to get into, with that being said, we're going to get into what Yahushua said at the end of that parable. How did he end the parable about that particular wedding? Let's go back. Let's see how the parable ended. Let's take a look at this. So this is Matthew chapter 22 and verse 14. And it reads, for many are called, but few are chosen. Wow. We just read, blessed are they that are called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Right? That's why I said invitations are being sent out almost every day. Okay, brothers on the highways, brothers making videos and things of that sort. But yet and still, many are called, but few are chosen. Are you going to be one of those that receive the invitation, but you're going to choose to ignore the dress code? Don't be that person. Consider this very video an invitation. And my advice to you is to make sure you prepare your garment. That's my advice to you, and to myself included. make sure you prepare your garment. But anyway, that's going to conclude this video. And again, the title of this video is The Only White Party That Actually Matters. Okay? So we went into what the real white party actually is. Okay? And this white party, of course, is in righteousness. Okay? You know, contrary to what they're doing on the left-hand side. Again, that left-handed side white party, that's a counterfeit white party. Why? Because white is supposed to represent righteousness, purity. Okay? But again, there's nothing righteous or pure going on over there. Okay? Now, their reasoning for wearing white on the left-hand side, again, they see themselves as the quote-unquote enlightened ones, the illuminated ones. Okay, everybody else is considered the profane. Okay, the layman, so to speak. But again, they're trying to mimic the right-hand side. Over here, we're trying to make it to the real white party. Okay, that marriage between the Lamb and his bride, which is, again, the elect of Israel. You want to be a part of that number, but you're not going to make it to this particular feast, this party, unless you put off the mortal clothing. You have to put on that immortal, that's righteousness. You're not going to make it to this particular party being wicked. Okay? So, with that, and as always, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High Yahweh, which is the name of the Heavenly Father. And I do so by Hashem, which means in the name of Yahweh Shai, which is the name of the only begotten Son of the Heavenly Father, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. And I want to thank all you brothers and sisters for tuning in. I hope this video was informative and edifying. And until next time, Shalom, family.